When I was a college student, I spent 4 summers serving as a summer missionary in Alaska. I was in Native American Indian villages north of the Arctic Circle in Fort Yukon and Chalkitsik. And during my 4th summer there, I finally began to feel really comfortable being there. I felt at home. I even felt at home in some of the wilderness settings there. So at the end of our 4th summer, I decided to ask my supervisor for a favor. We had just finished a week of wilderness camp out in, indeed, the wilderness, and everybody would be going back to the villages. And I asked him if he would allow me to stay out there all by myself, just for a few days, but if he would give me the chance to have a time of absolute solitude in the wilderness without anyone around. He knew me well enough at that point to believe that I could probably handle that, and he gave me everything that I might need for that time. And then all the campers and the staff got into boats and headed off in different directions to go back to the villages, and I was out there in the wilderness all alone. I've been alone before in my life, but I've never been alone quite like that. Nothing dramatic happened during that time, but the feeling of being absolutely alone was overwhelming. Eventually, they came back, they picked me up, I ended up in the right spot. But this is a picture of this next spiritual practice that we want to talk about, the spiritual practice of solitude. Being alone. Alone with God, but certainly being alone. Now, some who might hear that already are thinking, that's not for me. I can't stand to be alone. Other people are thinking that sounds absolutely wonderful. So our reactions to this spiritual practice of solitude are varied without any question. Some of us might say, thank goodness I'm finally alone. And some of us might wonder what we would do with all that alone time. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in a wonderful book called Life Together, addresses that dilemma. One chapter is entitled The Day with Others, and the very next chapter is entitled The Day Alone. And those two things really can't be separated from one another. We're drawn into community, and we pull away from community, and both of those are essential parts of our walk with God. Bonhoeffer's point is that both community and solitude are essential, but in our lives today, solitude is often the one we would tend to ignore. In Luke 6, Jesus models this beautifully. There's this pattern that shows up in Luke 6 that shows up often in Jesus' life, actually. We find him, first of all, spending the night in prayer. It's a beautiful picture of solitude. He's alone with the Father. No one else is there. He is praying, he's thinking, he's reflecting. He's enjoying the Father's presence. So a night alone with the Father. The next part of the story, we find Jesus in community. He gathers his disciples together after that night with the Father. And so there is solitude, and then there's community. And then later that day, we find Jesus and his disciples going out in ministry. And that is a beautiful pattern. It flows so naturally. There's solitude, and there's community, and there's ministry. There's solitude, and there's community, and there's ministry. It's a beautiful order. Often we turn things upside down. We get things backwards. Henry Nouwen, for example, describes what we often do, and it's not that order that I just described at all. He says we often start with ministry. We think of something good that we'd like to do, maybe something even that we think God wants us to do, and we embrace that and we jump into that and we give ourselves to that. But if that doesn't go especially well, if that ministry doesn't succeed, if it doesn't lead to some kind of good response, we often then turn to community. And we try to get other people to maybe come along and help us. So first there was ministry, or at least the attempt for ministry, and then there's a desire and a need for community. And then if things still don't go all that well, then we turn to prayer or solitude. We finally bring God into the conversation. We've done an attempt at ministry. We've gathered community. And Then we finally turn to God, and we basically at that point say, God, bless all of our efforts. Ministry, community, solitude. And that's exactly the reverse of what Jesus seems to model. Jesus, I think, gives us a great picture here. Solitude, time with God. Drawing us into community with other people and growing out of that ministry in the world. Jesus not only models that approach, but notice the inner peace that shows up in his life as he does his ministry. He has a very full schedule. He's never hurried, but he's always busy. He doesn't waste time. But notice the inner peace and notice where it comes from. He begins his ministry with 40 days in the wilderness, clearly a time of solitude. Just before he chooses the 12, he spends an entire night in prayer, solitude. When he receives news about the death of John the Baptist, he withdraws to a lonely place, solitude. After he feeds the 5,000, he immediately withdraws again by himself, solitude. After a long night of ministry, he goes out and before daybreak spends time, we're told, in a lonely place. And then after the 12 return from a very exciting time of teaching and preaching, Jesus calls them away to a time of quiet. Notice the theme of solitude, of time alone, of time set apart. And when we spend that kind of time with God, we're reminded of how God feels about us, what God says about us, what God believes to be true about us. In those moments of solitude, we're grounded. We're reminded of God's immense love for us, the fact that he's our Father, the fact that we're his children, the fact that he loves us with an everlasting love. We can be so busy even with important things, that we refuse to pull away and spend time with God. And if we do that, we are missing out on this wonderful gift. Time with God allows God to change us, to convince us of the truth, to fill us with hope, to give us courage, to challenge us to be his people. Solitude, time alone with God, another wonderful spiritual practice.